Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast, where I bring people who can impact your life because you impact my life. We are all a fractal community. If you think about it, we're all made up of the same stuff, reconstituted in these beautiful multicolored packages, and we're called human beings. Get that? Human beings are people of the sun in the image of man. And then we get to the being part. Sometimes I want to be you, sometimes you want to be me. Then we have issues when you should just be yourself. Today, my guest is Carisa Montooth, energy healer, relationships, lover of life, and absolutely exquisite looking woman. You know, I can get in trouble, Chris, for like saying woman. Be like, I didn't even identify what your pronoun is. You know, you could that's a real thing though.
I know. We have to be sensitive to that. I understand that. And, you know, that being said, I appreciate the compliment. Thank you very much.
You know, the reason I said that is because I went to a convention. My daughter's into these things they call furries. Mm-hmm. And this is what's really cool about the furry convention because, you know, when they are in their entity, which is their furry entity, they can be whoever. So I saw this awesome furry and I walked up to it and it was a feminine exterior. Mm-hmm. And then I heard, "Oh, thank you, Emmett." Now listen to this. I took pictures and we kicked it for a minute. And then I said, right now, what's your pronoun? And the male voice said, she. And I said, okay, thank you, darling. Mm-hmm. And I walked away.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of like, it goes with what we're talking about today, actually, because it goes with like our preconceived ideas of roles of what men and women should be and how they should interact with each other and all of those kinds of things.
And I am so glad that you agreed to come on the show because this has been perplexing me for a while because through the show, I get to talk in depth with a great deal of women. A lot of times, the most impactful and personal information comes post the show. We continue talking for at least 20 minutes, sometimes an hour or two after the show. And a lot of women offer things for women. And in my openness, I see how this could benefit everyone, how some of these things could benefit everyone. And invariably, I'll say, is this available for men? Mm-hmm. And every time I've heard the word no. Mm. After a while, I began to just open up and just say, let me be an open book and look at society and see what's happening and see if I'm seeing some kind of context. And then I started seeing like these movements that are happening, which I understand. But here's what I am afraid of in the empowerment is that women or the feminine could make a move that would exclude masculine. Mm-hmm. In so many words, end up doing what they put their accusers of. Mm. So I've reached out to quite a few people, as you've probably seen on my, and that was the gist of it. But, you know, sometimes I might need to, there might be a piece that I'm not understanding. So what impacts do you think women's empowerment has on like the relationships between men and women?
Well, I think that first, I want to say I think that a lot of men feel similarly to how you feel. I think that there is a fear that that somebody has to be more powerful, and so that means there can only be one position of power. So if men have occupied it for a while, then women are trying to say, "Get out of the way. It's my turn to be in charge of that," even in terms of relationships. And I think that that's something that has happened a lot because of society kind of pitting men and women against each other in relationships. Because even in relationships, it's like, oh, you have to get him to do this or that for you. Or it's, you know what I mean? And with men too, it's like, well, if you do this for her, then she'll, it's like, we're taught to see each other as kind of adversaries where we're sort of like circling each other to see who's going to win, in the relationship, like who's going to get their way the majority of the time. You know what I mean? We're taught that. And women are taught to see men as, Alison Armstrong has this great way of describing it, where she talks about how women are taught to see men as hairy, misbehaving women.
Which is, I'm going to let you finish and then I'm going to keep that in my cranium here.
Yeah. So it's a thing of like, instead of really seeing each other's differences and thinking of them as something that we can appreciate and learn to be in sync with, we see ourselves as like, our job is to make them like us. Why aren't they like us?
That is so poignant that you say this at this point in time in my particular existence on this planet. And I'm going to tell you why. So a couple of weeks ago, I have this Audible subscription and they jacked me for like over $100. And I was like, So I was like, well, I might as well use the credits. So I loaded up on a couple fiction books, and there was one book that's been sticking in my craw for years, but I've never actually gotten to it, which is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Sure.
And I got into it because I drive
John Gray.
Yeah, I got into it, and I was like, oh my God, he's describing me to a T. Oh my God, he's describing my wife to a T. So I sent the book to her. And she was like, I'm busy, boo. I can't, I ain't got time. And I was kind of like, I went into man mode. I was like, oh, I stewed for like a day and a half, and I get this WhatsApp text. It's like, oh my God, you're right. And we've been digesting and discussing it, and we see why there's some problems we don't have that we see other people having, because it's exactly what you just said. Men are like, why can't they just be hairless men, hairless, soft men? And women are like, why can't these hairy beasts just behave?
Why doesn't he do what I would do if I were in his situation? And the answer is because he's not a hairy, misbehaving woman.
Right.
And I think that causes a lot of problems, because we do this not only with men and women, right? We do this culturally. We do this based on what country we live in. We do this based on what our religion is. We're always thinking of our default as the norm.
Yeah.
Who I am is the norm. So everyone should be responding to the world the same way that I do. We should all think the same way that I do. If you don't, and we have a problem, then it's because you don't think how I do. And we can fix it by you thinking how I do, And with men and women, I think we have this tremendous potential now to be able to approach each other from this perspective of giving each other the benefit of the doubt and understanding that our differences, like if you can assume that there's a good reason for something that someone's doing, even if you don't understand what it is yet, then you can there's potential there. There's like potential for growth and evolution and deeper intimacy and like all these kinds of things. But whenever we're assuming that like the other person is trying to get over on us, or they're trying to get their way at my expense, or that kind of a thing. And we do that even in our closest relationships. We do that. We do that in marriages. We do that, and we're just like, I remember there was one time when, I said something, I was talking to my brother and my husband had just left, and I was talking to my brother on the phone, and I said, and then I said this to him, and then I said that to him. And my brother said, "You said that to the homie Sam?" And I was like, oh my God, he's right. He's right. Like, I said that to this person that I love, like more than anyone else in the world besides myself. I actually said this thing to him. And I thought, gosh, like, where was I coming from in my head that this person that I chose to spend my life with, I would impute these like nefarious motives, to like what he was trying to do. And it was something mundane, like a household thing. It wasn't even like, a serious, like a breach of trust emotionally or something like that. It was like something mundane, and it's just something that we do a lot. But I think that one of the biggest things that came out of the women's empowerment movement that is a little bit tricky for us is two big things. One is some confusion came out of it in terms of like, what are we expected to do now? And I think that that's on for men and for women. But then I think there's also this tremendous potential now, because we get to rewrite our roles, and we can have, if we have someone else whose roles complement ours, then that works great. So like in the case of like, what if the husband wants to stay home with the kids and he's better at it, and she can make more money, and she loves it.
A lot of times that can cause some problems though.
Well, sometimes it can, because then she feels like she's being judged for her, that she's lacking in some fundamental feminine quality of like being a good mother or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that can create some problems. Yeah. But if they can agree between the two of them, and they're being honest with each other, and they're looking at what you want, what I want, what's good for us, what's good for our family, and not looking as much out here about what they think people are going to think about it, but deciding here first that we're what matters, then it can be a really good thing.
I think there's this old thing that I don't think people really adhere to anymore, which was, and my mom used to, and my dad and my aunts and my uncles used to say this to me all the time when I was a kid: shut up, mind your business. It's very difficult today because we have a lot of information. We have a great deal more information than we had even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The internet has given us so much more data, and it's expanded our experience. And we're being introduced to new things into our culture, particularly in the United States. But it also comes down to this, what I think between men and women, because I know this with my current relationship, is most men and women are literally not friends first. Mm-hmm. And I literally just kind of dawned on me one day, because I thought back to myself when I was a younger person. Most of my relationships were driven off lust. Mm-hmm. Literally. I mean, like, you hear it. I mean, as a person I am now, I hear it. Ooh, he looks good. Or he has what I want. It's a lust for what he can do.
Yeah.
And he's saying, oh my God, look at her body, because I know how that works. I know how that chemical reaction begins, and it takes over everything else.
Yes.
It literally takes over. And I put on Facebook a while ago, I was like, you have to forgive me, like the first 35 to 40 years of my life, I was a drug fiend. I was under the influence of testosterone.
Yeah, right.
And it just screwed me up. It literally, I can see that now, being a mature man that I am. I can look back and go, but if we didn't have that, there are a lot of connections that we probably wouldn't even have thought about making. But and people aren't thinking of these things, that we are these animal creatures that have evolved.
Yeah. And
our civilized, what we know as, is very short.
Yes. We're still under the influence of a lot of those same neurotransmitters and those same kind of impulses and physiological systems that were set up for, a hunter-gatherer society. It's like we're still under a lot of that. And it actually is another one of those things that was a kind of a leftover thing from this, or an unintended consequence, I guess you might say, of this whole, the modern female empowerment movement, is like, there are influences out there that would have men and women think that that we function in the same way and that that's okay. So if you look at like the behavior of men in their 20s and 30s, and, it's like encouraging women to do that, right? Like having sex right away, or having sex with multiple people, or those kinds of things. And of course you can have sex like a man, like you have the freedom to do that and you have the power to do that and whatever you want. But it ignores some things that are very, some inconvenient truths, I guess.
Yeah.
Because things like, the fact that oxytocin, this hormone that gets released during orgasm, affects men and women very differently. It's like, it's a bonding hormone.
Yeah.
Women release a flood of oxytocin during an orgasm, and men don't. Men release dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone, which says, that was awesome. That's a different feeling than, I am bonded to you. You are my person.
It's like Avatar.
Yeah. And with female, with our makeup, it's like we are sort of driven to bond by this hormonal cascade that happens, and part of it is, oxytocin is released when women are breastfeeding. Oxytocin is released to bond us to our children,
Yeah.
And so it's super powerful, this chemical, very, very powerful. And when it's released during orgasm, it's like women become empathetic with this man to the point of they're starting to see the world through his eyes. They see things as an us. They see it as us. And I think that the impact that when we ignore that and we get into that situation, the cycle that what I see all the time is, then she realizes, oh, wait a second. He's just like jumped up and went, woo, that was amazing. And now he's good. Like he's not trying to bond with me. And then she tries to pretend she's not feeling what she's feeling by taking a step back, which makes things weird. And then if there was any opportunity for intimacy to develop organically between these two people, it's been completely destroyed by the timing of sex. And it's because they did not know each other before they had sex.
Right.
And it's the one simple thing, like what you were saying, is like, if they can wait till they're friends and then have sex, then there's a more of a chance that he's going to be on the same page as her, just in terms of like, I want to know you. I want good stuff to happen for you. I want you to be okay. I think you're a good person. Like if I just met you in a club and I'm just thinking about sex, we're not thinking about each other like that.
No, we're meat.
Yes. But if it's been 3 months or so.
It's funny that you say that 3 months, because as you were saying that, I hate to give this kudos, but Steve Harvey came to mind, because he says the same thing. And, women ultimately control that. I mean, historically, they have control. They're like, nope, not yet. Nope, not yet.
But they don't believe that.
You haven't hit the barometer yet. Nope, not yet. All right, you're good.
They don't believe that. They don't believe that anymore. They believe it's like, and I obviously, let's put a disclaimer on everything we're saying, so that we're saying some men, some women,
yes.
Not all men, yes. Not all women.
Yes.
Okay. So that we can say that from the top. But I think that a lot of women, especially a lot of younger women, believe that it is either, they believe that putting a check on that impulse means that they are not free, that they're not expressing themselves in a free way, or they believe that having that will lead to what they want to have happen.
Ooh.
It's like, if I give him this, it will lead to that.
It's not a barter system.
To the relationship.
So they believe it's a barter system, almost.
No, they believe that if we do this, then eventually, not like I'm going to give him this and then he's going to give me love, more like if I give him what he wants right away, he's going to realize I'm so amazing that he will decide he wants to be with me.
So that is, and this is going to sound, this could be construed as bad, but
Sure.
that is a very non-masculine way of thinking.
It is a very non-masculine way of thinking. And part of it is because men and women do not think about dating and relationships the same way. Women don't date. Women have relationships.
Yep.
So as soon as you have sex, you're having a relationship. Even as soon as you've gone on one date, you have a relationship now. And the reason you can tell that is because she got mad if you didn't call her and tell her you're not having a second date. If you just don't call her anymore after the first date, she's upset. Men don't feel like that. They're like, well, we didn't have a relationship. Why do I have to break up with you? Like, I don't understand. Like, we're not having a relationship. Why am I having to break up with you when I never asked you to be exclusive? You know, and it's because
that used to be a thing, you know.
Yes.
I was talking with, I had an author. She's written like 7 or 8 books, and she's 75 years old. She's like the same age my mother would be. And she said, you know, when I was young, we had this thing, we called it going together. Mm-hmm. And it was somebody asked you, will you go with me? That was a term. Will you be mine for this indeterminate amount of time? Let's be a couple was what they were saying. And it was determined. This is like 12, 13, 14, 15 on up.
Sure. Yeah.
That died because you don't hear that anymore. Like you don't hear about the transition. I met this girl or I met this guy. We were talking a bit. We were dating. Now we're a couple. All you hear is, you know, I was with this person. I'm like, with them how?
You hear about hooking up.
A lot.
You hear about hooking up, but you don't hear as much about, like, we had a conversation about being exclusive with each other. Like, that doesn't happen that much. But you do hear, like, I finally hooked up with so-and-so. You hear that a lot more often.
So these are the unintended consequences, but how did they get so construed in this manner? I understand that a lot of young women don't feel like they're giving up their freedom if they don't exercise their freedom. Mm-hmm. But it seems counterintuitive psychologically. You know, freedom, you don't really have to give anything away. You just own it.
Yeah. But the thing about it is, like, there's this sort of narrative out there that's like, you know, there still is the double standard with women, that if you have a lot of sex, you're a slut. And if you don't have sex at all, then you're a prude. And we've kind of translated it in different ways culturally. Right. So like for now we say, you know, I am empowered. I claim my sexuality. I claim my sexual expression. And that means that I can dress however I want, and that I can have sex with whoever I want, and that I can do those things. And the thing about freedom is that it's like, you know, when I first started, I remember when I went to college, when I moved out and I was going to college, and freedom, talk about freedom, right? Go to bed whenever you want, stay out as late as you want, do whatever you want. No one's telling you whether you need to study. No one's telling you whatever. You hit a wall really fast when you realize that freedom doesn't mean everything's going to go how I want it to go. Freedom doesn't mean I am free of responsibility or consequences for things. Freedom means that instead of someone else helping me make choices for myself that are healthy and wise, I have to do it myself, because there's no one else who's responsible for me except for me.
Say it again.
And I think that with this whole idea of freedom, that idea of responsibility kind of goes hand in hand with that there are consequences for that kind of freedom. And that for a lot of women, the consequence that they're feeling is, you know, the idea of freedom is like, I'll do whatever I want. Men have sex with whoever they want and have different partners and do whatever they want. So why shouldn't I be free to do the same thing? And I'm not saying, like, I'm not trying to, you know, take anybody's freedom away or anything like that. But I'm saying that women and men are fundamentally, at a physiological level and at a spiritual level, and at an energetic level. We are wired differently.
Yes, I know that.
And so, absolutely. So it's like, just because that works for them, or because he thinks that's working for him now in his ignorance and his youth, doesn't mean that is something that would work for us. Like, you know, I know so many women who have had to heal very deep energetic wounds that had to do with feeling used up, that had to do with feeling shame around their sexuality, because it became something that was bringing pain into their life and not something that was an expression of themselves or an expression of joy. Yeah. It was something that was the result of heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. And when they were coming in, you get to a certain point where you're so burnt out on the idea of love that you can't really be magnetic to healthy love, you know, and it's very difficult to do that. And there's so much that you have to heal to then get to the point of being magnetic to healthy love. And it's like, I've had so many clients who have been like, yeah, but you know, I have needs. And I'm like, I understand your needs, but your needs can be met in a healthy way that would satisfy you on all levels.
Yeah.
If you could engage your patients for just long enough to know this person. Like, you know, especially for women, like, you know, our body is like the key to our heart. That's like the gateway to our heart. And it's like it's like if people are hanging out in your body and you don't even know who they are.
Let me ask you, do you have men clients as well?
I do.
Because I'm thinking of the man boy situation. It's rampant.
The man boy situation.
The man boy.
Yes.
You know, the man boy is...
Bless his heart.
The man boy is everywhere. The man boy is in his 40s, 50s, and 60s now.
Yes.
And their numbers are growing. I think they had a conference in Chicago last week. It's the man boy conference. And I come from a different generation where you simply weren't allowed to be a man boy. Well, in my group, he was like, that's not allowable.
No. Well, your father would keep you from it, or your friends would ostracize you, or no women would give you any time of day. So there were a lot of societal pressures that would keep you from being a man boy.
Yes, and they are not there anymore. No. And I discovered this. I was divorced some years ago, and I got back out in this field, and it was like I was a flame, and so many women were a moth. I mean, and I was thinking it was the opposite, because when I left the game, I was the hunter and there was prey, right? Mm-hmm. I was the prey now. And I was not understanding it. And my younger daughter explained it to me. She's like, Daddy, A, you have all your teeth. B, you don't send dick pics. C,
which you wouldn't think you have to teach now.
Right. But you have your own place and it's clean, and you cook your own food and you look like you're well kept. Mm-hmm. I was like, those are basics, sweetie. She was like, those are missing. She was like, and women can see it from a mile away.
Yes.
I was like, ooh, that's pretty depressing.
It's depressing, and it also changes the dynamic in a weird way, because it makes too many people thirsty, and then they forget about their value.
You said the word.
Their value.
You said the word.
Problem.
Thirsty. That is so true. I do see a lot of thirsty people on both sides. But one thing that I kind of noticed, there is a break point. It seems like women in their 40s and up have a different ideology than women who may be 37 and below. 37 seems to be that breaking point where...
Definitely, yeah.
And I speak, you know, I have a lot of women friends, and I'm very open. I will create a dialogue, and I will ask these questions that are typically uncomfortable. And I found that the women who are older, they were like, look, I'm good with what I got, and this is what I want. I don't want to be a dude. I want to be a woman. I literally want to be a woman.
So many of my clients say that. It's my clients who are women who are in their like late 40s to early 50s.
Yes.
Women who are CEOs of companies, women who are in like high powered positions, because they're like, you know what? I can't tell you how many women have said this to me. They've said, I want to be the girl in my relationship. And I know exactly what they mean. And they're afraid to say that kind of, you know, more openly, because they think somebody's going to snatch their feminist cred from them or something like that. Like that somebody's trying to say that, you know, she doesn't want to be independent or something like that. That's not what she's saying. She's like, I want someone who is thinking about what he can provide to me, whether that's on an emotional level or whatever that is, not just someone who expects me to make all of the decisions and run the relationship and take care of him. They're like, I want a partner, you know, and it's like when they see that, they're like, I want someone who recognizes what they're, you know, saying on a deep level is like, I want someone who recognizes the divine feminine in me and who comes at me with the divine masculine. Yeah. I want that balance.
Yin and yang.
They're saying, I want the balance. Yeah. I don't want somebody who is looking for his mom, like to take care of him, you know, because that's a different energy, you know. And you see that a lot. I see a lot of women who are like, and they say these things when they feel safe. They say these things when they know that they're not going to be judged, because there is, you know, women are supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be tough. They're supposed to be able to do everything on their own. And they're supposed to want to be with someone, but never say they want to be with someone. You know, but they're supposed to never say like, I want a partner. They're supposed to say, I can do it on my own all the time.
But that's psychological programming. And I see it consistently through the environment. And when I say the environment, I see television, I see radio, I see print media, I see billboards. Everything is about you, is programming you 24 hours a day. And this narrative has shifted, where I used to see, maybe it was a little bit opposite, but there were specifics. So certain commercials were geared towards little boys or men or teenage boys. And there were certain things that were marketed in a specific way to women and young and girls and so forth and so on. Now they've literally blurred everything to where
you can't tell who it's marketed to.
The only way you can tell who it's marketed to if you have some historical context, because I will see a commercial that would generally be marketed to a young boy. It's now marketed and it's filled with girls. And I will see things that you would never see marketed to a boy with the inclusion. And I understand diversity without inclusion is nothing, but still there are some timeless psychologies that we all inhabit that just kind of run us. I always say this. All right. I said this to a young man the other day. I was talking about the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he's just recently married. And he was like, I don't know, man. I was like, okay, I'm about to explain it to you. This is your relationship in a nutshell. And if you go away with this and you really think about it, it'll change your perspective. He was like, whatever. I was like, listen, what's your favorite computer, Mac or PC? He's like, PC. Good. You're a PC. She is a Mac. You guys can do the same task. You can do them all. You do them in slightly different ways, but you can do the same task. Now I'm going to put you two on the same network and have you talk to each other. He was like, Macs and PCs can't talk to each other. I was like, right, you need an interpreter. So you have to figure out what her interpreter is, and she has to figure out what's yours. That's your job.
I hope you saved him hundreds of fights from his future.
But that's a good one, though.
It is. That's a good way of describing that, because it is. It's like they're both, they're both powerful. They can both do a lot of stuff. They can do a lot of the same stuff, but they're going to do it in different ways. Yeah. And they're not going to use the same software to do it. And it's going to look different while they're each doing it.
Yep. Exactly.
But to say that one's better is like, that's not productive or helpful or truthful. It's like, it's just not the way to do it.
Yeah, but and I'm so glad that I have the opportunity. But let's get into how you contribute to the billionaire lifestyle. So what is it that people that you do, what is your
superpower?
That works. You caught me. It's very rare words. You caught me.
Well, I have two superpowers. I can get out of meetings that don't involve me really easily.
You did a Tim Ferriss, huh?
Yeah. And I can come up with great metaphors to make a point.
Oh,
those are two good superpowers.
That's a superpower.
But one of the things that I really love to do, I work with men and women, but the majority of my clients are women. And I think it's because they're, I think sometimes men are more comfortable getting insights from a man, and I think that whoever gives you information in a way that you can actually absorb it and use it to impact your life is somebody that you should go to, right? Mm-hmm. So the majority of my clients are women, and I mostly work with high vibe single women who are wanting to heal their hearts so that they can attract really healthy, happy, committed relationships with good men who appreciate them, and that they can do the same in return. And a lot that we work on has to do with like healing issues in their family of origin, a lot of things that you do with their mom and dad, because that's your number one and number two, that showed you what you deserve to have in life, that showed you what love was supposed to look like, that showed you how people were supposed to treat you, that showed you how relationships are supposed to be. And that gives you the blueprint then for what you're trying to create for yourself. Once you become an adult and you get out there and you're, trying to make your moves happen in life and create your relationship, you're working off of this blueprint of like, well, what did they do? Even if you're not conscious of it. And if one of them was absent, then especially you have to look at those things, because their absence isn't neutral. It's not a neutral impact on your life.
That is true. I know that for a fact because I've just dissected my own life, especially in lieu of my second marriage that I'm in, because my current wife, is so emotionally intelligent that I felt like a kindergartner, but I came up quick.
Good for you.
I recognized
and her.
I recognized what she was and said I had to get on her level, mm-hmm. or at least aspire to be on her level.
Yeah.
And then there were some things I brought to the table that she took from. So we mm-hmm. try our best to be a yin and a yang and have an open discussion. But that started because we were friends first. And it sounds so counterintuitive to a young man. Because if you'd have told me that when I was like 20, I'd be like, you are out of your mind. Because I was a drug addict. My drug of choice is testosterone.
Right.
It is driving you, but it makes so much sense because that is the driver. Because in this state, I told my wife, I was like, if I would have had this state of mind when I was 20 years old, I may have never had it. I may have been like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go build a rocket ship and fly to Saturn. That's my primary goal. It is what kept us alive. The things that are under attack now, there are some bad things that have come out of it. And we are living under a patriarchal system that is based out of, European English, Spanish, mm-hmm. that we can't shake. But I understand we do have this, we're at this juncture where we can correct it.
Absolutely. And a really good example of that is actually what you were just describing in your marriage and your relationship with your wife, is that she was a woman who inspired you to rise to her level. And I think that that's somehow what's missing a lot, is that, if you believe that the rules are a certain way and that they can't be changed, you're going to just try to play by those rules. You're just going to keep trying to play by those rules. I think that a lot of women feel like the rules are about working on how to strategically get a man or find a man or those kinds of things. It's like about a chasing kind of a thing. And that's really weird energy.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it brings you out of your energy, out of feminine energy, because feminine energy is more about receiving and is more about, it's like a lot of the women that I talk to, it's about, you know, I say the flame does not worry about who's looking at her. The flame doesn't try to change, you know, she doesn't worry how she stands still and she burns brightly and she attracts like crazy. Yeah. That's what the flame does, you know, and it's kind of like a weird thing where we get into this energy where we're not, you know, masculine energy is important energy. It's necessary energy. And we've had advances in civilization because of masculine energy, but feminine energy is also important. Women are the keepers of civilization, right? Women decide the structure of a family. Women decide, like, is this going to be a family? Is this not going to be a family? Like,
that is true.
Women decide, and women also decide, like, what does our society, how do we value our children? What value do we place on our children in our society? Like, when things need to happen around children, women are making sure that those kinds of things are happening. Like, women say, this is civilized and this is not.
That is very true.
And it's important that we're making advances, right? Which is something that masculine energy really helps us with, because masculine energy is about competition. Masculine energy is like linear thought. We do this, then this, then this, then this.
Very much true.
Masculine energy is very much like, we can do this, me against the world, get my hustle on, all those kinds of things, right? That's masculine energy. There's a place for that, and it's precious, and it should be appreciated, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for feminine energy. Feminine energy is collaboration. Feminine energy is like, let's all come together and do this thing together. You have skills that matter. You have skills that matter. You have skills that matter. Let's put them together and do something amazing. You know, that's feminine energy.
That's so true, because men be like, I got to kill everyone so I can grab their energy and go get it done.
Right? Men are like, but who's in charge?
Yeah.
So I can overthrow him.
That you say that, because I've said this for years. If it wasn't for women, I wouldn't have aspired to what I am today. Everything that I've done, if you go back to its root, it's because of this feminine energy that I was trying to attract. It's the reason I got a car. And it's the reason that I got a job. It's the reason that I got an education. It is the reason that I wanted to present myself a certain way. It's the reason I'm not out back in the woods just blowing stuff up and trying to jump on a deer with a knife. And have taken a bath. That's why anyone knows.
It's true. My younger brothers, my dad had the hardest time trying to get them when they got to a certain age to take care of their hygiene voluntarily on their own. Until girls came into the picture.
Yep.
And then they were actively interested in their hygiene, and how they looked and how they dressed. I mean, it's true. It's like, and there are things about both that are so, like, there is a thing about healthy masculinity. And I think when we talk about the patriarchy, we need to make a distinction between healthy masculinity and toxic masculinity, because there is healthy masculinity that we want to, and that's what the women who I think your daughter was kind of pointing out to you, that's what they were attracted to about you, was healthy masculinity, and there's a thing about healthy masculinity where men just have an innate desire to be your hero. They want to be the hero to the women in their lives, to the women that they care about, even if it's a kid with his mom. It's like they want to be the hero. And you can see it with little kids and what they choose to do and be and dress up for Halloween, like little boys. Yeah. It's a very innate thing in that's a part of healthy masculinity. And it's something that, like, I think if women are not, if they don't have a lot of examples of healthy masculinity in their lives, then it's something that they might assume is not real, or is like a myth, or even like it's for some women, but it's not for me. And I will hear it because they'll say things like, how come all the men around here are XYZ? How come all these men, blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of like, if you're flying at this level, because you think that the world looks like that. You think there's nobody above you. You know, you don't think there's anything else there. So, but if you go up, if you come up out of the clouds, you can see the sun, and that there are other people flying around at the sun level. You know what I mean? It's like, we can be here together too. But and it's like with your wife, you know, she inspired you to rise up, you know, to rise to her level. And there were things that you gave to her. I'm sure that, like, you know, a healthy masculine presence is very reassuring. It helps women to understand that, like, they're safe to grow and to evolve and become things, whatever it is that they're wanting to be, or whatever their goals are for themselves.
That's funny that you've said that, because, like, early on I said, "What do you want to do?" And she looked at me as puzzled as possible. Like, what do you mean? What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. Well, I want to do this, and I want to do that. We'll do it. I got you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what you just said. Do it. I got you.
And she was like, "What?" That's
healthy masculinity. That's like treasure.
She was like, you know? She looked at me with the most puzzled look on her face, like surprise and shock, like I had said some, like, magic language that she didn't know, but that she automatically understood. She was like,
"Oh my God." He said those magic words. It's like, I wanted to go back to school, and I didn't know how I was going to do that with the job that I was in at the time. This is like, you know, 15 years ago, something like that. My husband said, well, I think that you should just quit your job and go back to school. And I was like, yeah, but then I won't be making money. And he's like, that's okay. I can take care of us. That's fine. And it's funny too, because I didn't realize this as a newly married person, that if I kept questioning his ability to bring in money, it would become insulting at one point. And these are things you learn, you know, in marriage. It's like, if you're not used to somebody taking care of you, that's something you have to learn how to receive.
It is.
And you have to learn how to, you have to learn how to receive. You just have to learn that, you know. And I remember him saying, no, you need to know that I can take care of us. It's going to be fine. Go back to school. And I was like, cool. You know, and I went back to school. Yeah.
Well, you know, I am so enjoying having this conversation with you, because A, you let me know I'm not crazy. B, you shed some light on some things that people aren't really saying. People are really, and when I say people, I am not generalizing. Let's put it like this. There's 50% here and there's 50% there. I'm talking about one of those 50%. And it's not male or female. It's just a group of individuals that constitute a large majority. And with that, we're going through some transitions, and the pendulum always swings hard to one side before it starts to come back the other way. And for me, there are some other things that are thrown into the fray, because now we're not just male and female. We are male, female, they, them.
Yeah.
And to me, it all comes down to, and I said this to my daughter when she was beginning her feminist phase. I said, I understand, sweetie, about feminism, but at its core, it's civil rights. It's basic civil rights. And you're really going to have to understand that it's just because you're a woman, you need those civil rights. Because if you understand women's suffrage, they didn't have those civil rights. They fought for the civil rights, and they're still fighting for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't got to that basic point. They understand the high level stuff, the headlines of everything, but they don't understand the article itself, in my point of view. And I'm saying my point of view. And ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to open up a narrative and start to have these conversations with people, because I see them and I see how they're affecting men's lives, because there are very good men and very good women But there are some men who are falling, their deeds, how do I want to put this? They're doing good deeds, but they get caught up in an act or they do something that can be deemed inappropriate and their lives are shattered. I'm seeing it. And I'm not talking about at the Hollywood level. I'm talking about in the everyday level. Men are frightened. There are men who are literally frightened. And I'm scared that it will further tarnish the relationships of the future of men and women as we know it. Because it doesn't take but 10 or 20% of something to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely think that I can definitely understand that men are fearful.
Very.
Because of not knowing what to do or not knowing kind of what's expected. And I think that that's just kind of a period of transition. There have been a lot of women who have endured for a long time some of the things that men are starting to kind of experience now for a very long time, and have even been taught that it's their responsibility to care what men think of them because it will actually impact their safety, their livelihood, their life, their ability to live. There was a woman who she ignored a man who was flirting with her, so he followed her into a parking garage and strangled her to death.
Yeah, I can. Do
you remember this story?
I don't remember the story, but I've heard similar things.
Yeah. But the thing about it was not very many women hearing that story were surprised, because the message, when we look at something like that, we say, what was she supposed to do? So a lot of the time it's like, what was she supposed to do? She ignored him. So she was trying to not antagonize him. She didn't insult him. She was trying to just ignore him and get to her car. And for so many men, being confused about the role or feeling like they're looked differently at work, or that somebody thought ill of them and that they didn't deserve that, it doesn't usually come down to life or death issues the way that it often does for women.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of times when women listen to men, when men are expressing their very honest feelings, that like they feel frightened, about what's going on, or that they are concerned about it. For some women, it's difficult to get to that place of really being able to hear that if you've been, I can probably name for you 7 or 8 issues in my life where either because I was young, or because I was a woman or a Black woman, or a combination of all of those things, that it was, if a white man had come to me and said, I feel really frightened about this situation, it would have been really hard for me to listen to that with grace and understanding.
Yeah, I do understand.
But I think that it's sort of conversations like this, I think, are the beginning of that, because I think that if we can come, like I said, if we can come to each other with this, like assuming good intentions, assuming that it's healthy femininity meeting healthy masculinity, assuming that like we want the same thing essentially, which is like deeper connection, to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel appreciated for what our gifts are and our strengths are, then we can do big things. We can reach these deeper levels of intimacy. We can create more things. It's like there's a lot of potential for that there if we're able to do those things. Mm-hmm. I think also if we this is something that I think is tricky, is that we're used to saying that we want to hear from men. But then sometimes, and it takes a lot for a man to be vulnerable sometimes, and then when he is, sometimes it's like he's regarded as less of a man.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is difficult in those kinds of conversations. That's something that gets in the way of us being able to heal things. And the other thing I think that gets in the way of trying to heal things is that sometimes when the emotions do come out that have been suppressed for so long, it's like women are kind of viewed as being hysterical, or she's kind of blowing it out of proportion, or whatever the thing is. So it's like, those are the areas where we sort of have to give each other the benefit of the doubt. We have to give each other grace. We have to be like, okay, let's come to this in the middle and just really talk about not just how we feel, but like, this is what I appreciate about you as a man. This is what I appreciate about you as a woman. You know, we have to like come from this place of being able to do that with each other, because we got to do something, Emmett. I mean,
you actually just made me realize of a conversation I was having with my daughter some years ago, because I always conferred to her, because she's she's kind of like me in female form, and we can, and we will be brutally honest with each other. Like, she will say things to me that other dads would be like, I have to kill my daughter now. Now I'm like, no, she's being honest with me, and she's telling me what I need to hear. But I was having this kind of a couple of years ago, this going on with my daughter, and she said, she kind of sighed. I remember we were driving in a Jeep, and she was like, Daddy, you know why you don't get it? Why you don't understand what's going on? And I was like, no, I don't. She was like, because you're not that dude. That's why you don't see it. That's why you're taking this so hard, because you're not that dude. Mm. I was like, and that stuck with me. She was like, and I remember some things like, sometimes you can't see something because you just can't see it. Mm-hmm. Or you can't understand something because it's so foreign to your body, to your spirit, that it literally makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense to you. You keep saying, how could anybody do that? Why would anybody want to do that?
Yeah.
What would even make somebody do something like that? Yeah. And it can be hard.
And that just came up as we were talking. It's like, oh, okay. But it's still good for me to have the dialogue for those people who may be in that or have a different take on it, so they can hear these biological opposites having this conversation, dialoguing about things that are very, very relevant and timeless in our society.
Yeah, and even that by itself is, sometimes that's good enough.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what we are. We are all billionaires. And you say, no, Emmett, I'm not a billionaire. And I say, you're a lie. And I say, let's go back to your inception, when a man and a woman were entertaining each other, and they shared some biological material. They were in this dance. They were in this twine. They were in this yin and yang. And some material came, like one piece from her and a piece from him got together. The cosmic energy came over that union, and 2 became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16, and so on, until 30 days later, there were 1 billion pieces, and that pieces was you. From there, you've only ventured forward and became even more fractal of the same stuff. And you're a trillionaire just in your gut flora alone. So quit tripping on this stuff. When you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot, keep hanging there, rest a bit, then pull yourself up and start again. Love you all. Peace.